Welcome back to Daybreak Extra. Right now, we will bring you the top stories from different newspapers in the nation today. And as usual, we'll be starting with the Daily Trust newspaper. The headline there says, accidents persist as drivers abandon multi-billion naira trailer parks. The riders there says, cause gridlocks on Kano, Kaduna, Niger highways. Residents construct eateries, restroom, and wash bays. And menace will end soon, says FRSC. Now, these stories you'd find on page 5 and 6 of the newspaper. Above the headline there, it says, Tinubu's inauguration, Buhari family move to glass house. The story you'd find on page 31 of the newspaper. Beside that, you'd see, will APC survive the discontent, acrimony over 10th National Assembly leadership? A good question right there. You'll find this story on page 33 of the newspaper. On the entertainment section, it says, why I use Hausa for my content on TikTok, says Bello Galadenchi. You find this story on page 16 of the newspaper there. And right below the marks is a Daily Trust, reminding the government that there are still people, should I say schoolgirls, in captivity. About 4 schoolgirls of FJC Birnin Yauri, and they've been in captivity for about 697 days. And 1 student of Bethel Baptist High School, Kujama, about 673 days in captivity. Really sad one there. We hope the government reached, they can see this and work on it. And at the bottom of the newspaper there we have Northwest deserves Senate presidency. Now this is been said by Abdul Aziz Yari, the former governor of Zamfara State and senator-elect of Zamfara West. Now this is some of the stories on Daily Trust today.
All right, next is the Punch, Saturday Punch, and the lead story there says Buhari changes residence, aides move out belongings from villa. And the writer there we have we won't wait for security officials harassment before parking. That's the president's aide. And villa clinic relocated to 21 billion naira presidential suit. Tinubu to decide new furniture. And another story at the bottom of the Punch says how coffin makers laugh all the way to the bank. Wow, now that will be found on pages 20 to 21. So we have another story down there saying a friend advised me to poison my son. That's the mother of a boy with cerebral palsy. We're really sad there. And that will be found on page 24. Now, moving to the top of the Saturday Punch newspaper, we have the National Assembly leadership aggrieved APC aspirants may sponsor candidates against Akpabio and others, and that will be found on page 4. And moving to the other story, there we have Karim Madu's influence wouldn't have counted if trial in Nigeria, says Justice Taiwo, page 2 of the Punch. And this is some of the top stories in that newspaper.
All right, let's move to what the Nations is saying today. From the top there of the newspaper, we have Labour Party crisis deepens as court affirms Apapa chair. Writer there says the AG chairman summons LP lawyers and the month's briefing on Obi's election petitions. This story you'll find on page 7 of the Nations. Beside that, you see, I must be president of Nigeria, Obi insists. Now you'll find this story on page 5 of the newspaper. The headline there says, NAS, why APC settled for Akpabio Abbas by Shetima. Now this is a story people would want to see the reason, considering there's been a lot of chaos in the National Assembly, or should I say the NWC meetings happening around. And the writers there says, Rancoro's National Assembly will hurt Nigeria. And VP-elect pledges to reach out to aggrieved speaker aspirants in meeting with Abbas, Kalu and others. Now this story you'll find on page 4 of the newspaper. When you move down, you'd see confusion trails Emefele's alleged application for study leave. Really interesting one right there. It says the presidency denies knowledge of Buhari's approval of leave. Now, this story you'd find on page 5 of the newspaper, and there is a pictorial of House of Reps Deputy Speaker, Speakership aspirant Benjamin Kalu, aspirant of Speakership Tajuddin Abbas, a member-elect Ade Deji Olajide, and Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima. Right there, and it says below it, you'd see, stop comparing my government with fire miss, says Oye Banji. It tells Ekiti people. You'll find the story on page 7 of the newspaper. Beside that, you'd see ahead of May 29, Buhari relocates to Glass House. Right there says presidency movement normal for outgoing presidents. Life transition. This story you'd find on page 29 of the newspaper, and at the bottom there you see project concession to raise 647 billion naira for federal government. You find the story on page 8 of the newspaper. Now, these are some of the stories on Nations today.
Up next, we have the Guardian newspaper, and the top story there says concerns over Buhari's last-minute contracts loans. That will be found on page 2, and some of the writers to that story says experts warn NAS against approving fresh request. Says country already struggling to repay existing loans. Now president's reasons for new loans lame, says Sislak. And another story there on the bottom of the page says Ekwere Madu taught English in Wandsworth prison, former inmate reveals. So we have other stories on The Guardian saying non-execution of condemned criminals, the cruelty, injustice, and way forward. Okay, so we also have the story that says Joyce Kelechi Ozongwe, if you are married to a good man, support him. That is what she says there. And on the bottom of that newspaper, we have NIMET warns 12 northern states of thunderstorms, floods in May. And that will be found in page 5. That's really an interesting story there. And you would want to check out which northern states are those. This is what we have for the Guardian newspaper.
Okay, we move to the Vanguard Saturday. Start from the bottom. It says court jails 61-year-old cleric for impregnating 16-year-old girl. You find the story on page 9 of the newspaper. The headline there says North roars on APC. Grant us NAS leadership or we will withdraw support for party, says the governors. And the writers there says demands not negotiable as North not in charge of executive and judiciary. Another writer there says Tinubu may delay NAS proclamation over Akpabio, and Abbas moves against Adamu for instigating protests. You find all the stories on page 26 of the newspaper, and of course, you find some on page 5 as well. On entertainment there, it says Agbani Derego inspired me, says Eme Ada, most beautiful girl in Nigeria winner. This story you'd find on page 20 of the newspaper. Below the marks there, it says telecoms operators disrupt banking services, withdraw USSD services to banks over 120 billion naira debt. You find this on page 26 of the newspaper, and with that story there, it comes with a pictorial of Dr. Isa Alipantami. Beside that, you'd see Maria Benjamin recounts ordeals after BB Niger experience. You find this on page 19 of the newspaper, and at the top of the newspaper there is insecurity, 1,230 killed and 658 abducted in 3 months. This says the report, a really sad one there. You would find the story on page 26 of the newspaper. Now we have May 29, 5 Abuja residents ask court to stop Tinubu's swearing in. and it seeks restraining order against CJN. This story you'd find on page 9 of the newspaper. Now, these are some of the stories on the Vanguard today. And lastly, let's move to Punch Sports. It says there from the top, it says Aston Villa versus Spurs. Villains eye first double over Lily Whites. Beside that, you see Chelsea versus Nottingham. Dennis out as Forest Blues battle. You find the story on page 4 and 5 respectively. We have Rashford doubtful for Wolves clash. This story you'll find on page 4. The headline there says exclusive series Bridge Builders scorecard of Nigerian players to Stamford Bridge. You get the story on page 3 of the Punch Sports Extra. We have Haaland wins FWA POTM awards. Interesting. This story is on page 4. At the left side of the newspaper, it says Decision Day, Aribo Onuachu on the brink of relegation. This you find on page 5. We have Los Blancos eyes Olmo as Asensio replacement. This you find on page 4 of the newspaper. There is Silva wants Blues contract terminated. This story is on page 2 of the newspaper. We have Madrid favorites against City Cannavaro. You find this on page 3. At the bottom of the newspaper there, it says Messi to return against Ajaccio. This story is on page 2. And Danjuma picks Onyene Zide 19. Others for Wafu B Turney. This story is on page 6. And of course, the celebratory corner says why I'm in love with Arsenal football philosophy, says the actor Ezike Asiebu. Really interesting one there. Now, these are some of the stories on Punch Sports Extra. And with that, of course, we wrap up the top stories from different newspapers in the nation. But don't go nowhere. We'll be right back to analyze some of these stories. Stay with us.
Now, as part of efforts to support Africa's goal of strengthening...
Now, looking at the activity chart, as you can see right here, a total volume of 130.
A Boko Haram crisis that at that time was restricted to Yobe.
How secure are they? You can see security men with blood.
This is the road leading up to the...
Already, if you look at England squad, you are looking at EPL, you are looking at their names. You are not looking at...
TV, documenting the Nigerian story.
When a situation where you find that they look at the same,
not necessarily tribal or regional.
I have said that.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. So right now we move on to analyzing some of the top stories from the dailies today. And we'll start with accidents persist as drivers abandon multi-billion naira trailer parks. And it says it causes gridlocks in Kano, Kaduna, and Niger highways. Now, Dana, if you're traveling from Kaduna to Abuja here, you would see there is this place. I don't know if it's Tama or there's this place they call, I forgot. I know it starts with T, and you see trailers, packed. Yes, and when you get there, you have to slow because they double park on each side of the road, and honestly, it's really bad. So when people are new in, coming to that road, when they are new to that road, they don't know how the road works, people will just come in high speed, and that could cause, accidents. It's really a sad one there.
I know the roads are mostly not as wide as would guarantee that. But then the disturbing issue would be that there are trailer parks for these cars, and then they choose to abandon that and choose to park by the roadside.
No, what it's saying is that they have abandoned the trailer park.
Yes,
I think the government has made a provision for the park to be there, but the project has not been completed. So right now there is no park for them. That's what the story is saying. There is no park for them to. So right now, people are calling on the government to, push on that project. Make sure there is a trailer park so that when the trailers, are done with their work, they can have a place to go and park for people to have a clear and safe road, to drive on. A really sad.
That's really a necessary thing to do because their lives are involved here.
Yeah,
and it's really sad.
Okay, it says that. How bandits invaded Kagarko Emir Palace and abducted 3 daughters and 5 grandchildren. A really sad one. I remember the story says that his wife was also abducted, but she ran away. I think she escaped the abductees, the abductors rather. So it was really a sad one, and the Emir gets to sit down to talk about it. The Emir of Kagarko, His Royal Highness Alhaji Saadu Abubakar II. A really sad one there. The insecurity in especially the northern part of the country is really alarming.
Especially Kaduna. Kaduna has been on the news for so many incidents like this. And hopefully the 3 daughters and 5 grandchildren are rescued.
Yes, I think I read on a newspaper today saying that the governor, Rufai, and some of the emirs from all the other places, and I think some of the leaders from southern Kaduna have had a sit down to talk about the insecurities and how they can stop all these hostilities. And
honestly, hopefully this should be stopped because the back and forth of incidences like this in Kaduna and other northern states is alarming, and a lot of people are traumatized as a result of this. Think of if these people come out, what happens? These are children, 3 daughters, 5 grandchildren. They might be younger than maybe we think, and the trauma they would live in after this.
A lot of the girls that were abducted come back pregnant with kids. The trauma is just so sad. We just hope that they could. We hope that they'll get safe before any of that gets to them.
Hopefully.
Okay, let's talk numbers here. It says 1,441 people. FRSC. Said that's a federal road safety were killed between January and March 2023 in 2,733 crashes with 8,339 others injured. There's a lot. There's been a lot of accidents.
Sometimes when the numbers are just called, it's important to know that these are people. These are human beings. It's not just 1,441. We're talking about people, lives involved.
A lot.
One after one, we have 1,441. That's a lot.
A lot. Sometimes it comes from maybe recklessness in driving. Sometimes it comes with bad road. The situation is just a sad one, and these numbers, how do we, try to reduce this kind of road accidents?
Sure.
It's something that I feel a conference needs to be organized.
There should be a deliberate conversation around this and how we would have less crashes on our roads.
Okay, another number there says 200 workers, Anambra State government intends to sack from state-owned National Light newspaper for not generating enough funds.
Wow.
Now we're talking about, I thought the government was working on, creating more jobs. Now you're talking about getting 200 more people out
Sacked.
of job.
On the roads, doing what?
Well, if you should sack them, you better look for something else to give them, because the insecurities in the country is really alarming.
Honestly.
And it's all lack of, job to do. And we've had stories of even the people that have work are also, doing bad stuff. Like the two, I think one was a naval officer and the other was a correctional officer that attacked someone, collected his car, and then asked him to to send about 400,000 naira to the account. That happened in Delta State, which is really sad. So even people that have jobs are still tempted to do bad things.
Even with the job, talk about how comfortable the pay has been for these 200 people that are being intended to be sacked. So these people have families. They possibly have children. They possibly have people that depend on them. So if they lose this job, look at the whole drama that will happen for the people depending on them, for their own families, and for them.
True. A lot there. Okay, another number says 57 Nigerians selected for 2023 cohort of the Mandela Washington Fellowship Program in universities in United States. Okay, that's a good one. At least we get to hear a good story.
Yes, at least this is coming.
Of course. We have another number says 20 capital ships, 300 inshore patrol vessels the Nigerian Navy said were purchased for maritime security equipment under President Muhammadu Buhari's administration. Well, the main point is security. So anything that would, secure people's life and property, then of course, it should be deployed. It should be done. Okay, it says Nigeria's oil production crashes to 0.9 mbpd as Angola leads Africa.
This is an interesting story, Sumaya. Means 0.9 million barrels per day. This is one thing Nigeria depends on.
Yes. This is what we keep bragging about.
Our economy in total depends on oil. And a lot of quotas have called for diversification of the economy. And that seems to be slower than it should happen. And the country is still exploring more oil wells in different states.
Yeah.
And to know that as a country, we're investing a lot on that. And this is happening. We're still not leading in Africa.
Yes.
That is. You ask a lot of questions as to, are we not supposed to try and explore something else?
Yes.
Should diversification of the country's economy to other sectors not be something that we should be talking about at this point in time? Because this is a natural resource. Though we have it, anything can happen.
Yes, anything can happen. Honestly, I think that the government needs to work on... Well, anyways, the incoming government has a lot to do already. So it has to put, more effort in having other means, for Nigeria to depend on. We have textile. What happened? Let's bring textile back. People are pushing. And at that time, I remember our parents saying, Nigerian rappers was one of the best, in Africa. People come here to get them. Things like that could actually move us. Let's try to produce more and less consumption. Right? Okay,
sure.
What about NYC at 50? Did you see that, the thing that was
There's
happening?
There's this trend on social media. It's
Everyone
really interesting.
was just taking pictures of them
you
with
see
their
people
NYC
going
uniform.
back to their archives to really bring up those pictures that they've not seen in a while, just to feel, I have also served.
Yes.
I have also served. So that trend is really interesting, that there's something that brings everybody together. As a country, there's something that brings smiles on people's faces. There's something to remember, because it's beyond posting of these pictures. It's going back memory lane.
Yes,
it's thinking about all the experience, thinking about what happened during camp, that 1 year in a different land that you've not been to possibly before. And all of those memories are interesting, I think.
Yes, it is. It is interesting. For me, I couldn't relate because I lost my phone and lost all my pictures of my NYC days.
Oh.
So I was asking if someone could borrow me. And the NYC uniform so that I can retake some pictures.
Oh my God.
But it was really interesting seeing people. Of course, I remember someone posting pictures, and some of her friends that they did serve together were sending her more pictures. She was like, oh my God, I can't believe this. So yes, I agree with the memory lane thing.
Lucky they
really
still have mine. Interesting.
Okay, I want to watch them later, of course. All right, so these are some of the stories that we can take today, to analyze, of course, but don't go nowhere. The show continues. When we come back, we'll open the line with an interesting discussion. Stay with us.
When a situation where you find that everybody look like the same,
Not necessarily tribal or regional.
but I have said that